Although Lulu is a strong solo laner, she still has the potential to shine in the bot lane due to her poke heavy laning and overall utility for peel. Lulu is a great support champion, especially since you do not need items to scale up and transition out of the laning phase. Here are my tips and tricks to dominate solo queue with Lulu support. Let's start by going over the strengths and weaknesses of Lulu support as a pick in general, starting with the strengths. The first being that her wonderfully dynamic kit has tons of crowd control and utility, giving you a lot of options during your play. Unlike Morgana or Alistar, who might just use their one crowd control combo and then auto attack until it comes up again, Lulu's kit and fairly low cooldowns ensures that you are always going to be doing or preparing to do something in fights. And this also makes her amazing at peeling. Lulu is great at protecting AD and AP carries alike, and unlike most supports, Lulu is one of the only champions in the game that can reliably help protect assassins or tanks, with her ultimate of course. You can just do so much to keep a target off of someone while buffing them up and dealing damage. In addition, her damage overall for a support is really good, as her base values on her skills are fairly high. This gives her a strong lane matchup versus a lot of champions, and pretty much every melee support, as well as just having a strong lane overall. And for her weaknesses, there's only a few. The first being that she's somewhat squishy. Her base stats are kind of low, so she can get bursted down if you get caught off guard. She's great at disengaging fights though, so this kind of thing can be avoided just by having good positioning. But if a bursty champion does get a decent lead versus Lulu, you can kind of just face roll over her completely since she's so squishy in the first place. So this kind of thing makes her a little bit easy to snowball against. In addition, she has both no sustain and mana issues. The mana issues stem from having low cooldowns, so it's more about not wasting mana or using skills too often. However, having no sustain can be kind of a problem in some specific matchups. Although Lulu's damage is hard to match, if the opponents find a way to out-harass you or go even in trades while having sustain, it can be difficult to pressure the opponents since you will not have a reliable way other than recalling and potions to come back from a bad trade. And lastly, and this is by far the most important weakness, and that's that Lulu is weak in comps that cannot synergize with her. You should not and cannot play Lulu in a composition that does not work well with her. This is one of the main reasons why Lulu support has a poor win rate on solo queue, despite being a fairly strong pick overall. So, there's a few scenarios where picking Lulu is good, and you want to have at least 2 of the 3 scenarios to be true in your overall team composition, otherwise you just flat out should not pick her. The first being that you have synergy with someone on your team and your ultimate. Basically just someone who dives in, who Lulu can then follow up with her ultimate. Champions like melee assassins and strong initiators are great examples. The next is that if you are in a situation where you counter multiple players of the opponent's composition. Lulu is an amazing counter versus assassins, as well as most melee initiators. It's kind of funny how she counters the champions that she does well with. And the third is that you have a team where Lulu can perform well in teamfights. Lulu does great at peeling, as well as helping people dive, but if your team doesn't need to do either of those, it can be very tough to excel with her in teamfights. And so those are the 3 situations where Lulu does well as a pick. If you have a good lane matchup, you could possibly play her where only one of those 3 situations are true, but generally I would only pick her if at least 2 or all 3 of those scenarios are true. So this means that I would strongly recommend against picking Lulu support early in Champion Select. Now, in order to both lane and teamfight properly, you need to maximize what you get out of her skills. Keep in mind as I go through these that they are just general guidelines, and of course you should not limit yourself just because you want to use your skills efficiently. But anyways, for her Glitter Lance, for using it aggressively, so you want to make sure that you follow it up with some auto attacks. This also includes the EQ combo that although it does give you huge range on that ability, it's often not worth the mana unless you already have a pretty big health advantage and are at full or near full mana in the first place. For your polymorph, you want to use it when your opponents dive in on you. You can CC them the instant they jump in, giving your team time to kite, disengage, or follow up to burst the crowd controlled target. As for the speed boost, it's not as complicated, just use it to speed up someone when they need it. As for her shield, it's important to know that it shields and deals equal damage at all ranks of the ability. This means that when fighting, if it's a close fight, you're going to want to use it as a shield, because the shield will include armor and magic resistance in its values. A 200 point shield could be worth around 300 health because of armor and magic resistance, while it might only be worth 150 damage or so because of your opponent's magic resistance. However, using it to deal damage to an opponent grants vision as well as a way to hit a long-range glitter lance on them, so when chasing them down in a fight that isn't close or is around heavily unwarded bushes, you shouldn't use the shield and instead use it for the damage. And as for the ultimate, you want to use it to hit the knockup, whether aggressively or defensively. Unless the health is needed to instantly save the life of the player, hitting the knockup is really good, especially since the ultimate has a slow, so it actually follows itself up with additional crowd control after the knockup in the first place. And so, don't be afraid to flash ult someone. Lulu's ultimate range is not that big, and champions that dive in can often go in really hard, covering a lot of distance, putting you out of range. So flash ulting to knock up 2 or 3 people can be a very powerful play in teamfights. Alright, now for the laning phase. In general, Lulu is a poke champion who loses to heavy sustain opponents that can keep up with her harass, while she instead beats initiate all-in kind of champions. However, although they may be good matchups for Lulu, those all-in kind of champions do still have a lot of outplay potential since Lulu is kind of squishy. Versus initiate lanes, you want to use auto attack harass to gain a health advantage while using glitter lance and polymorph to deny engages. If they do manage to find and engage on you, you want to try to disengage with glitter lance and polymorph, as well as continual auto attacks to put yourself in a decent spot. If you have to fight an all-in because you overextended or you just don't have the ability to disengage for whatever reason, you want to do your best to kite back and limit damage onto you. Lulu's kiting with abilities still does damage, so you can keep up in fights if you can get some auto attacks off most of the time by keeping your opponents out of range to hit you. But usually it will be you going on the aggressive since Lulu is a fairly strong lane bully, so you can walk up and auto as well as crowd control your opponents, transitioned into a strong harass with a disengage at the end of the trade with your glitter lance for lots of free poke or at least some very solid trades. For versus a sustain heavy lane, there's going to be 2 ways to play. One, where you try to just out-harass the sustain, which Lulu can definitely do, but it is a little bit difficult, or you can ignore small trades for the most part and instead play as if you were an all-in champion, just by walking up with your AD carry, using crowd control, and your overall kit to dampen the opponent's disengage. Be aware of how you and your AD carry are playing the lane though, as otherwise you can get out-sustained and fall behind if you're not really coordinated in your playstyles. For teamfights, you want to position similar to how an AD carry would. For the initiation, don't be afraid to overextend a little bit to land a good ultimate if necessary, but be sure to back up immediately, and for the most part just stay slightly ahead of your carries in teamfights, and then of course use your crowd control to peel and kite for your teammates. It's nothing too special compared to other standard support teamfighting, other than doing your best to knock up as many people as possible with your ultimate. And so be sure to protect your allies, use your polymorph when someone dives in, not when they're at a distance as well, as then they can just kite out the duration a little bit of the polymorph instead of denying their dive. If you aren't trying to protect someone though, you can use the speed up to chase or polymorph to deny harass or perhaps follow up on some crowd control from an ally. Now, as far as summoners go, you can take flash and then the option of exhaust, ignite, or heal. And you're going to want to take exhaust versus assassins or other people who dive in and burst. Take ignite for a stronger lane when the opponent's team does not really suffer versus exhaust. And then, of course, we have heal as the last remaining summoner spell, and it's a defensive option. Heal combos well with Lulu's ultimate, since that, as well as potentially with Mikhail's, you can combo to give people 1,000 or even perhaps 1,500 health or more almost instantly. Heal is a bit weird of a support summoner spell though, and potentially consider having your AD carry take barrier in that scenario. And for your skills, you're going to want to max Glitter Lance for the lane bully damage, and max Polymorph second, since the crowd control duration is increased when you put points into it. Put a point into your shield at level 3 or 4, and points into your ultimate whenever possible. And for masteries and runes, you can either take an offensive poke heavy setup of O 1614 as well as 80 reds, health or armor yellows, MR blues, and AD quints. This is an auto attack focused setup and works well versus other lanes that have no poke or no sustain. Or in matchups that aren't as favorable, you can take a more standard utility or a more standard tanky based setup. For the utility, a setup of 0921, and for the tanky setup, you could take 0219. And I like to go armor reds, 4 health or armor yellows depending on your personal preference, 5 mana regen yellows, MR blues, and armor quints. This I would perhaps take in a worse matchup or when I want to be a little bit more tanky / have a little bit more survivability. And for item builds, you're going to want to go coin into Sightstone and boots, then follow that up with Mikhail's, Talisman, and then you can either build tanky or you could go some AP damage if you're pretty fed. I personally don't like building AP, so I'll usually go full tank after Mikhail's and Talisman, and maybe I'll get Twin Shadows occasionally when I feel like it's good, but for the most part I'll just build tanky. And I don't really like Spell Thief's Edge on Lulu since it doesn't give as much gold as the coin would, and it can be difficult to consistently proc, and having that kind of thing to rely on in laning phase to get gold can be kind of annoying and create a really awkward playstyle, as well as Frost Queen's claim just isn't as strong on Lulu since she already has a very reliable low cooldown slow in her kit in the first place. And so after your first few items, you can just build situational support or tanky options. My name is Jeremy, and that's it for my video on Lulu support. I recently just moved into my dorms at UC Berkeley, and so my internet is really good, so I'm streaming a ton. Be sure to check me out over at twitch.tv/Jeremy_gamingcurios. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to check out some of my others on the screen right now, or stay connected at facebook.com/gamingcurios. Drop a like, share this video, and make sure to subscribe for some more awesome content in the future. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.